The village of Idjakpo was an old place. It rested between two great rivers. The rivers flowed like strong arms holding the land. The soil was rich and red. It gave yams and cassava to the people. The people of Idjakpo were proud. They knew the stories of their fathers. They knew the stories of their fathers' fathers. These stories were told under the big Iroko tree. The tree stood in the center of the village. Its branches reached for the sky like a god. It had seen many seasons. It had seen many generations. The sun rose and set over Idjakpo. The days were long and warm. The nights were cool and full of sounds. The crickets sang their songs. The owls hooted from the dark forests. The connection between the people and the land was deep. It was a bond that could not be broken. The earth was their mother. She fed them when they were hungry. She gave them water when they were thirsty. Their ancestors were buried in this earth. Their spirits watched over the living. The people believed this with all their hearts. They made sacrifices to the spirits. They poured libations on the ground. They asked for protection and good harvests. The rivers were also sacred. They were home to powerful water spirits. The fishermen would pray before casting their nets. They knew that the river could give life, but it could also take it away. Nature was not just around them, it was a part of them. The history of Idjakpo was carved into the land itself. Old shrines stood hidden in the groves. These were places of power. Only the elders and priests could go there. They spoke the old words. They performed the old rituals. The village had seen times of peace. It had also seen times of war. Neighboring clans sometimes came to raid. They came for food, for land, or for people. The warriors of Idjakpo were fierce. They fought with spears and machetes. They defended their homes with their lives. Every man knew how to fight. Every woman knew how to be strong. This was the way of Idjakpo. It was a life of struggle and of pride. The seasons turned in Idjakpo. The dry season came with its dusty winds. The rains came with their heavy storms. The people followed the rhythm of the land. They planted their crops when the first rains fell. They harvested when the sun had ripened the fruits of their labor. Festivals marked the passing of time. There was the New Yam Festival. It was a time of great feasting and dancing. There was the festival to honor the ancestors. It was a time of remembrance and respect. Life in Idjakpo was tied to these cycles. It was a life lived in harmony with the earth and with the past. The village was more than just a place to live. It was the heart of its people. In the village of Idjakpo lived a boy named Oghenenero. He was 15 years old. His name meant God is great. His parents had given him this name with hope. He was not a big boy for his age. He was lean and wiry. His arms and legs were long. His eyes were his most striking feature. They were dark and deep. They seemed to hold a quiet wisdom. They watched everything. They missed nothing. Oghenenero did not speak much. He preferred to listen. He listened to the wind in the trees. He listened to the stories of the old women. He learned more by listening than many boys learned by talking. His skin was the color of rich earth after a rain. Oghenenero came from a noble family. His father was a great man. His name was Ovi. He was a respected warrior and a wealthy farmer. His yam barns were always full. His lands stretched far, touching the edge of the dark forest. Ovi was known for his strength and his fairness. He led the Idjakpo warriors in many battles. He always returned with victory. Oghenenero's mother was named Ejiro. She was a kind woman. Her beauty was known in Idjakpo and beyond. She managed her husband's household with skill. She taught Oghenenero the songs of their people. She taught him to be gentle and to respect the spirits of the land. The boy carried the legacy of his parents. He had his father's strong will. He had his mother's quiet spirit. People in the village saw his father in the way he stood. They saw his mother in the way he looked at the world. But Oghenenero was his own person. He was a mix of both, yet different. He felt a deep connection to the past. He often went to the shrine of his ancestors. It was a small, quiet place behind his father's compound. He would sit there for hours. He would feel the presence of those who came before him. He felt their strength flowing into him. It was a secret comfort that helped him through lonely days. Before the tragedy, his life was full of promise. He was the only son of Ovi. He would one day inherit his father's lands and titles. He would become a great man, just like his father. The village expected this of him. He learned the ways of a warrior from Ovi. He learned the ways of a farmer from the men who worked the land. He learned the stories of his people from his mother. His childhood was happy. It was filled with the sounds of a bustling compound. It was filled with the love of his parents. But fate is like a sudden storm. It comes without warning. it changes everything in its path. And a great storm was coming for Oghenenero. The raid came at dawn. The sky was still gray. The village was asleep. The enemy warriors came from the north. They moved like shadows through the morning mist. They were silent and deadly. Their goal was to steal and to destroy. The warning drums began to beat too late. The men of Idjakpo woke up to the sounds of screams and fire. They grabbed their spears and machetes. They ran out to defend their homes. Ovi, Oghenenero's father, was at the front. He roared like a lion. He fought with the strength of 10 men. He was protecting his family. He was protecting his village. The battle was fierce. The clash of metal filled the air. Oghenenero was only 10 years old. His mother, Ejiro, hid him in the food barn. She told him to be quiet. She told him not to move. Her eyes were full of fear, but her voice was calm. She kissed his forehead. Then she went to help the other women. She went to tend to the wounded. Oghenenero sat in the darkness. He could hear the terrible sounds of the fight. He could smell the smoke. He prayed to the ancestors. He prayed for his father's safety. He prayed for his mother's return. The battle seemed to last forever. The sun rose higher in the sky. It shone on a scene of chaos and sorrow. When the fighting stopped, the village was quiet. It was a heavy, sad quiet. The enemy had been driven back, but the cost was high. Many of Idjakpo's warriors were dead. Oghenenero slowly came out of the barn. He saw his father, Ovi, lying near the iroko tree. He was not moving. His spear was broken beside him. He had fallen defending the heart of the village. Oghenenero ran to him, but it was too late. His father's spirit had departed. Soon after, he found his mother. Ejiro had been struck by a stray arrow while helping a wounded elder. She lay in the dust, her kind face now peaceful in death. In one morning, Oghenenero had lost everything. The impact on his life was immediate and deep. He was no longer the son of a great warrior. He was an orphan. The world became a cold and lonely place. The laughter of his compound was gone. The warmth of his mother's embrace was a memory. The strength of his father's presence was a story. He was moved to a small hut at the edge of his father's lands. He was alone. The village mourned for its losses. But soon, life had to go on. People rebuilt their homes. They planted their fields. But for Oghenenero, the world had stopped. The shadow of that terrible day followed him. It shaped him. It made him an outsider in his own home. Oghenenero's inheritance was vast. It was a source of wonder and of envy. His father, Ovi, had been a very successful man. He owned more land than any other man in Idjakpo. His fields produced the best yams. He had large herds of goats and cattle. He also had a treasure chest. It was a heavy wooden box. It was filled with old cowries, rare beads, and carved ivory. These were the rewards of his many victories. This wealth was now Oghenenero's. It was his birthright. But he was just a boy. He was too young to manage such a great legacy. This was what people began to whisper. The jealousy in the village grew like a poisonous weed. Men who had once respected Ovi now looked at his lands with greedy eyes. They saw a boy living alone. They saw wealth that was unguarded. They saw an opportunity. The warriors who fought beside Ovi felt they deserved a share. They said, "We bled for this village. We deserve some of this land." The elders, who were supposed to be wise, also felt the pull of greed. They thought of their own sons. They thought of how Ovi's wealth could make their own families stronger. The whispers grew louder. They became open talk in the village square. The envy was not just about the land and the treasure, it was also about Ovi's name. Ovi's memory was a great shadow. He was a hero. His name was spoken with reverence. Some men were jealous of this fame even in death. They wanted to erase his legacy. They wanted to build their own. By taking his son's inheritance, they could diminish Ovi's importance. They could make it seem as if he had left nothing of value behind. Their envy was a complex thing. It was a mix of greed for wealth and a hunger for status. Oghenenero was just a boy caught in the middle of these adult ambitions. The wealth became a curse for Oghenenero. It did not bring him comfort. It brought him trouble. It isolated him even more. Other children were told not to play with him. Their parents feared the powerful men who wanted his land. Oghenenero felt their stares. He saw the way they pointed at his father's fields. He understood what they wanted. His inheritance was a heavy burden. It was a constant reminder of what he had lost. But it was also the only thing he had left of his parents. It was his connection to them. He knew even as a young boy that he could not let it go. He had to protect it. The elders of Idjakpo were meant to be the keepers of tradition. They were the men who settled disputes. They were the voice of wisdom. But after Ovi's death, their voices changed. They began to speak of Oghenenero's inheritance. The chief, a man named Ozoro, was old and easily swayed. His council was filled with ambitious men. One of them was Efe, a warrior who had always been jealous of Ovi. F began to plant ideas in the chief's ear. He said, "The boy is too young. He cannot manage such wealth. The land will go to waste. The ancestors will be angry." He spoke these words with a concerned face, but his heart was full of deceit. The elders and warriors started to pressure Oghenenero directly. They would visit his small hut. They would speak to him in soft, persuasive tones. "Oghenenero, my son," one might say, "you are just a boy. This burden is too heavy for your shoulders. Let the council manage your father's lands for you. We will keep them safe until you are a man." They made it sound like they were helping him. They presented themselves as guardians, but their eyes told a different story. Their eyes were hungry. They looked at the boy and saw only the wealth he represented. They saw him as an obstacle to be removed. Their motivations were wrapped in layers of self-interest. They claimed they were acting for the good of the village. Idjakpo needs strong men to farm these lands, they argued. We need this wealth to strengthen our defenses. They used the memory of the raid to create fear. They said that a weak owner of such rich lands would invite another attack. They tried to make Oghenenero feel guilty. They wanted him to believe that holding onto his inheritance was selfish. They wanted him to think he was putting the entire village in danger. It was a clever and cruel strategy. They used the boy's grief and isolation against him, but their primary motivation was simple greed. Ife wanted Ovi's best fields for himself. Other members of the council wanted parts of the herd. The chief wanted a share of the treasure to secure his own position. They saw a chance to enrich themselves. They justified their desires by claiming it was for the community. They twisted the traditions of their people to serve their own purposes. They forgot that their duty was to protect the weak, not to prey on them. The whispers of the elders became a constant, threatening noise in Oghenenero's life. It was the sound of jackals circling their prey. Oghenenero did not break under the pressure. Instead, he grew stronger. His days, kind of fell into a strict routine. He woke before the sun every single day. He would go to the river to wash, and honestly, the cold water sharpened his senses. Then he would tend to the small garden he kept behind his hut. He grew just enough food to feed himself, learning to be self-sufficient. He did not ask for help from anyone, because he knew that accepting help would be seen as a sign of weakness. It would give his enemies another reason to say he could not manage on his own. So, he worked hard. He kept his body strong and his spirit focused. After his morning work, he would go into the forest. This was his training ground. He had watched his father train for years and he remembered every move. He made a wooden sword and practiced with it every day. He swung it at the thick vines, fought against imaginary foes, and learned to move with speed and grace. He also practiced with a bow and arrow he had made himself. He became a skilled hunter, able to track animals and move silently through the undergrowth. The forest became his teacher and his sanctuary. It was the one place where he felt free from the watching eyes of the village. His connection to his ancestors deepened. Every evening, he would go to the small family shrine. He did not pray for riches or for an easy life. He prayed for strength. He prayed for the courage of his father. He would sit in silence and listen. Sometimes in the quiet of the evening he felt he could hear their voices in the wind. They told him to be patient. They told him to be brave. These spiritual moments gave him a profound sense of purpose. He was not just fighting for land. He was fighting for his family's honor. He was the living link in a long chain of proud warriors. He could not be the one to break it. There was one old woman in the village, named Igo. She was said to have the gift of sight. She watched Oghenenero from a distance. One day she saw him returning from the forest. She stopped him. She looked into his eyes. "They see a boy," she said in a low voice. "They see weakness. But I see a fire within you. It is the fire of your ancestors. One day, that fire will burn so brightly that it will blind all who doubt you. Do not let them put it out, child." Her words were a great comfort to Oghenenero. They confirmed what he felt in his heart. He was not weak. He was just waiting for the right moment to show his strength. The day finally came. Oghenenero had just turned 15. This was the age when a boy in idjakpo could begin to be seen as a man. The chief's council saw this as their last chance. They had to act before he grew too strong, before he gathered allies. They sent a messenger to summon him. The message was simple and cold. The chief and his council demand your presence at the Iroko tree. A decision will be made about your father's lands." Oghenenero knew what this meant. This was not a discussion. It was a judgment. They were going to strip him of his inheritance publicly. The entire village gathered. It was a hot, tense afternoon. The sun beat down on the dusty ground. The people stood in a large circle around the Iroko tree. The elders sat on their carved stools. Chief Ozoro sat in the center, looking uncomfortable. Ife, the warrior, stood beside him. His face was a mask of arrogance. He looked confident, believing his plan was about to succeed. The villagers whispered among themselves. Some felt pity for the boy, while others were on the side of the elders, thinking it was for the best. Most were just curious, wanting to see what would happen. Oghenenero walked from his hut towards the center of the village. He did not walk like a boy going to be judged. He walked with his head held high, his back straight. He wore simple clothes, but he carried himself with the dignity of a chief's son. He did not look at the crowd. He kept his eyes fixed on the council. He remembered the words of the old woman, ego. He felt the fire within him. He felt the strength of his father. He felt the presence of his ancestors walking with him. He was not afraid. He was ready. He had been preparing for this day for 5 years. He reached the space before the elders and stood there silent and composed. The air was thick with anticipation. The usual village sounds had stopped. The birds were quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Ife was the first to speak. His voice was loud and full of false authority. "Oghenenero, son of Ovi," he began. "We have called you here today for your own good. You are a boy. You cannot manage the great wealth your father left. The council has decided to take control of the lands and treasures. We will be their guardians." He said the words as if the matter was already settled. He did not expect any resistance. Oghenenero listened to Ife's words. He let the silence hang in the air for a moment. Then he spoke. His voice was not loud, but it was clear and steady. It carried across the quiet square. "I am Oghenenero, son of Ovi and Ejiro," he said. "I am the guardian of my father's lands. I am the keeper of my family's honor." He looked directly at Efe, then at each member of the council. "You speak of being guardians," he continued, "but your eyes show only greed. You speak of the village's good, but you think only of your own. My father did not die so that jackals could feast on his legacy." The crowd gasped. No one had ever spoken to the council with such disrespect. Ife's face turned dark with anger. "You are an insolent boy," he shouted. "You have no right to speak to us this way. We are the elders. We make the decisions." He stood up, towering over Oghenenero. "You will give us what is ours by right of this council, or we will take it." He gestured to 2 of his strongest warriors. They stepped forward, their muscles tense. They held heavy wooden clubs, ready to enforce the council's will. The crowd moved back. They could feel the violence in the air. Chief Ozoro looked away, unable to watch. He had let Efe's ambition go too far. Oghenenero did not flinch. He stood his ground. "My father's lands were earned with his blood," he declared. "His treasures were won with his courage. They are not yours to take. I will not give them up." He then turned to the people of idjakpo. "Do you not see what is happening? These men use tradition to hide their theft. They use their power to prey on an orphan. Is this the way of idjakpo? Is this the honor my father died to protect?" His words struck a chord with some in the crowd. They began to murmur, seeing the truth in what he said. The council was not protecting tradition. They were breaking it. Ife could not let this continue. He had lost control of the situation. He had to crush the boy's spirit now. "Enough talk," he roared. "Take him. Teach him to respect his elders." The 2 warriors moved forward. They expected the boy to run or to beg for mercy, but Oghenenero did not move. He simply dropped into a low fighting stance. It was the stance of his father. He had practiced it 1,000 times in the forest. He was not just a boy anymore. He was a warrior, ready to defend his honor. The confrontation was no longer about words. It was about to be settled with strength. The 2 warriors attacked at once. They were big men, confident in their strength. One swung his club from the right, aiming for Oghenenero's head. The other charged straight in, trying to grab him. The crowd held its breath, but Oghenenero was not there. He moved like the wind. He ducked under the first swing and used the charging warrior's own momentum to spin him around, sending him stumbling into his partner. The 2 large men crashed into each other, and the crowd let out a collective gasp of surprise. The boy was faster and more skilled than anyone could have imagined. His years of lonely training were now on display for all to see. Before the warriors could recover, Oghenenero acted. He did not have a weapon, so he used his hands and feet. He struck one warrior in the back of the knee, making him fall. He dodged another wild swing from the second man and jabbed him hard in the ribs. The man grunted in pain and dropped his club. Efe watched in disbelief. This was not the weak, helpless boy he had planned to intimidate. This was a skilled fighter. In a few swift moves, Oghenenero had disarmed and defeated two of Efe's best men. He stood over them, breathing steadily. He had not even broken a sweat. In his fury and desperation, Efe himself charged forward. He was a powerful warrior, but his anger made him clumsy. He swung his own heavy club at Oghenenero. The boy sidestepped the blow. The club hit the ground with immense force, right beside the heavy treasure chest his father had left. The wood of the old chest splintered and broke open. Its contents spilled onto the ground. But among the cowries and beads, something else lay hidden. It was an object wrapped in old cloth. As the wrapping fell away, it revealed an ancient sword. The hilt was gold, and the blade seemed to capture the light of the afternoon sun, glowing with a soft, warm fire. Oghenenero saw the sword. He felt a powerful pull towards it, as if it were calling to him. He reached down and picked it up. As his fingers closed around the hilt, the glow intensified. This was the Sun Blade, a legendary weapon of the first chief of Idjakpo, lost for generations. It was said that it would only reveal itself to a true and worthy heir. By standing up for his rights, by showing courage against injustice, Oghenenero had proven himself worthy. Holding the Sunblade, he was no longer just the son of Ovi, he was a figure of destiny. His fight was not over, in fact, it had just begun. This act of defiance marked the start of a new struggle, a battle for the very soul of idjakpo, a quest for truth and justice.